Annie Shine again. I'm
Hello.
sorry to disturb you again. I'm hoping that you don't find me annoying and that instead you find my questions stimulating and interesting.
I look forward to our conversation, obviously.
That's fantastic. And I am talking on behalf of lots of people. I'm actually, just as a general comment, actually quite excited to be living in times where finally there seem to be perhaps even millions of people, but certainly thousands of people all over the world who are waking up to how the elites, those with lots of money and power, have been manipulating and controlling people using all sorts of means, including the law,
Right.
and they're starting to question it, which I think is very exciting. Firstly, did you find out about the legality of opening one's mail?
Right. I was just about to say about that. I have looked onto everything I can find, and I can't find anything that says you either do or you don't. There's lots of law that says you can't open other people's mail, but I can't find anything that says you have to open your own.
Right.
Not to say there isn't anything, but I can't find anything.
Okay.
The only point, because I was going to send you an email, I'm still trying to find out about the code question you had as well, which I'm still waiting for our data people to come back to me on exactly who wrote what.
Right.
So in terms of opening post and the census, as far as I'm aware, there may not be anything that says you have to open the envelope. However, there is the law that says you have to respond.
Right.
Census. So it's kind of an academic argument as to how you do that without opening the envelope, but the onus is on the householder to respond.
Well, it's not addressed to the householder, it's addressed to the occupier.
Yes, I agree. But that's what I'm saying. The law says the householder has to respond, whether or not the census questionnaire is addressed to the householder. They have to make a return.
Right. Okay, so I've got lots of really interesting questions for you today.
Okay, there we go.
So let's start with this. Someone contacted me recently and he said that he's staying in someone else's house and he refuses to give, he does not want to give his friend to give his personal information. He is against that.
Right.
And if his friend does write his name down, will he be committing any sort of crime by giving away his personal information?
Right, so hang on, let me just get that to my mind. So you've got somebody who's staying at a friend's house.
Yeah. And he does not want to give over the information. He's against it. He thinks it's
right, so
it's an
if
envision.
the householder then puts him onto the questionnaire against the guy's wishes,
Yeah.
is he committing an offence?
Yeah.
I would say no, because census law says he has to do that. He has to record basic details of his friend on the back of the questionnaire as a visitor. If he's staying there regularly, if he would be classed as a resident, then he should complete all the questions. So I would say no.
But isn't that a type? I mean, isn't that the dangerous sort of moving into a type of spying situation?
It could well be an interesting point on the Data Protection Act and things like that, which I would have to look at seriously. But my initial thing would be no, because he has a statutory duty to do that, which may then go over data protection laws. But that's just me saying this, off the top of my head without looking into it.
Right. Okay. Is it illegal to shred the document before returning it?
Well, you wouldn't be making a return then, because it's the information.
Well, if you filled it in but then you shredded it.
Well, I think we could argue that that's not a usable return. That's not something we can get the data from.
Right, I understand that, but I'm saying on a strictly legal basis, surely that's completing it and returning it.
Again, it's a defence you'd have to try out in court.
Now you see, now that's interesting. You see, that particular point which you've made several times, this is very interesting because at the end of the day, you see, whether I personally fill in the census in a way is not that relevant to me. What's relevant is what this census and the way the law is being used is starting to reveal about the way the law is used in many, many other areas. So there's a maxim in law, if I'm correct about this. I presume you are a lawyer. Are you a lawyer?
Yes.
Yes. So the maximum law is that ignorance is no defence in the law.
Correct.
Which actually really means that we're all actually defenceless. Because the law is actually decided in court. Which means if I was to know the law, I'd have to know what the judge thinks about things. Or what the jury thinks about things, or the magistrate, yeah?
Well,
so you keep telling me this, but...
You've got normal law, which is put down by statute. You then have case law, where cases come up where a judge would say, right, okay, well, I think in this situation, the law can be read as such and such. I mean, you've still got the basic rules, which in this case would say, yes, you have to complete a return.
But the basic rules are written in language, which is, well, firstly, well, here's another question then on related to this. Is the questionnaire written in English or legalese?
The questionnaire
Yeah.
is written in English.
Right.
In as plain English as we can get it.
In as plain English as you can get it. So, but each word in itself is open to interpretation. So, for example, just the whole idea of sending it to the occupier, right? I mean, that in itself, I mean, I simply do not see myself as an occupier. I'm not an occupier, right? So each word is open to interpretation. And that's why I find it a little bit interesting and a little bit frustrating as well, but very revealing, that I ask you a question and I say, look, I'm going to give this paper, for example, to someone else. They're going to fill it in. I'm going to deem them as the occupier. And I ask you a question like that. And often you say to me, well, that will have to be sorted out in court. In which case, I can't possibly know what the law is ahead of time. So I can't make a proper informed decision as to what to do.
Well, I think in terms of whether or not you would shred it and you return, I think you can, it's quite a normal notion to think that would be wrong, because the data you're providing is useless then. And there would be no physical way of us putting that back together and guaranteeing we'd got it in the right order to be able to read your data. Therefore, that's not a completed return.
Right, well, yes. Well, again, that's down to your interpretation. I think it is a completed return. It's completed and then it's shredded. And the reason why it's shredded...
I would say that's not. You would argue that it is.
Right.
It's a legal argument which would only be really agreed or not by the judge in the case.
Right, exactly. Which brings me back to this problem with the law, which this is revealing, is that if the law is decided in court, then you could never possibly know it.
Well,
which means... Yeah, but lawyers disagree on the interpretations.
Well, lawyers make their money by disagreeing on the interpretation.
I know they do.
And the interpretation.
Yes, exactly. And that's the whole point, isn't it? Does the Queen and Prince Charles have to fill one out for each residence?
They do indeed.
Right. Personally? They have to do it personally?
Whoever is deemed to be the householder in Buckingham Palace would have to do it, yes.
Right. And David Cameron, does he have to do it in every residence he has?
Absolutely everybody.
Right. And he has to do it personally. He can't get anyone else to do it?
I mean, he could ask somebody else to do it. I mean, any person who's responsible for completing a questionnaire can authorise someone to do it on their behalf.
Right. Okay, so if I authorise someone to do it on my behalf and they filled in lots of, let's say, comedic and really funny answers, then who would be liable?
You're still responsible.
I'm responsible.
Yeah, you're responsible for the information.
Right. Okay. What counts as work? There's a question about work. I mean, for example, is growing one's own food work? And is trading currencies counted as work?
I'm trying to think about that question now. I think we're talking about paid work.
Oh, paid work.
It's paid.
So anything that you do.
The questions there. Hang on, let me just get a copy of the questionnaire in front of me. I think it says, were you in paid?
So would prostitution count as paid work?
Well, it's a job, I suppose.
Right. And we see, because trading currencies, for example, that's something that, as far as I'm concerned, does not produce anything. The only thing it does actually is take away from wherever the money is coming from.
Yeah.
So to me, that doesn't really count as work. But you're saying that is work, are you?
Well, if you're paid to do it by somebody, if you work for one of these investment banks that does that, and that's your job, then yes, that would be your profession, wouldn't it? So, and your paid work, so you would record that.
Right.
In terms of growing your own food,
yeah.
I suppose unless you're growing it to be sold or somebody's paying you to grow it, no, that wouldn't count.
Right. Director of the England and Wales Census, Glenn Watson, I'm sure do you know Glenn?
I do indeed.
Yeah. He was quoted as saying, "We have to have made contact. So quite a lot of the people that don't return the questionnaire, our census field staff have not been able to make contact, and you cannot prosecute a house."
Yes, we need an individual to prosecute, yes.
Yeah, so if they don't make contact, there's no way they can prosecute me.
That makes it very, very difficult for us, yes.
Great. Well, that's good to know, isn't it? Just seeing if there's anything else. Oh, yes. What's the deadline for this? What is the deadline? Because it says on the form 27th of March or as soon as possible. So if I'm very, very busy, which I might well be, so what is the actual deadline?
Right, okay. There's no fixed date as such by when you must have done it. The way we work is we say that the form should be filled in on the 27th of March or as soon as is reasonably practicable after that. That's what the law says.
Right.
However, if you're about to come back to me now and say, my interpretation of reasonably practicable is 10 years' time, that's one offence. There is also another offence of refusing to give...
Sorry, what's the first offence? What's the first offence?
Sorry?
What's the first offence?
The first offence is not completing and returning a questionnaire.
Well, where is that not completing? Where is that? Where's the wording of that? Because I've looked
in the census order and the census regulations.
The census. Where can I find that on the web?
Right on the. I can send you a link. Actually, that's probably easier than trying to remember where they are.
Okay.
I'll send you a link in a moment to all the legislation.
Okay, great.
So basically, the first offence, the big one is if you don't complete and return your questionnaire.
Yeah.
There's another offence of refusing to give information to a census officer, as they're legally known, somebody who's working on the census. So anybody who turns around and says, "Oh, I'm going to do it. This is, in my view, is still a reasonably impracticable excuse. Well, the census officer could turn around and say, "Right, well, I want you to give me the information now."
Right.
If you refuse to do that, that's another offence.
Ah, got it. Right.
So
best not to talk. Best as far
there is no set date to say.
Right,
28th of March, you have to have it done by then.
Great. So from my point of view, as someone who thinks the whole thing smells, I'd best just not to talk to these people, I suppose.
Well, you'll be contacted. If they can't talk to you, they'll email. Not email. They'll send you a letter to the.
Oh, they can send a letter to the address. They can send as many letters as they like. Yeah. Interesting letter in from someone recently who said they did send it out, and this was, I think, from the last census. They sent one out, put all their information in, and it got lost. And then they refused to do it again because, I mean, if you lose the first one, then no one's going to give you another set of information, are they?
Well, no, but we have no proof that it has been lost, or it's just somebody saying that they've done it.
Yeah, but why is the onus of proof on me? The onus of proof is on you to prove that I haven't done it.
Well, we wouldn't have to prove it because the legal duty's not been satisfied because we don't have the census form.
No, in order to prosecute me, you have to prove that I haven't sent it.
Yes, well, but I say the way the law is crafted, our proof if we don't have it in our possession, you haven't complied with what you have to do.
Right, that's
so
a very interesting.
If we don't have it, you still got to do it.
Right, got it. That's a very interesting word, crafted. It sounds like witchcraft. Anyway.
Drafted.
Yes, no, crafted is much better. I like that.
Okay.
One last thing. I have a friend who's is a meditation master. He practices meditation, and he sits for months on end quietly meditating.
Okay.
And he probably won't even look at his post in that time.
Okay.
Don't you think it's rather should we say, well, let me not put words into your mouths. What do you think about the idea that we've got to a state of affairs where in this country it's going to become a crime to do nothing?
Okay, well, that's an interesting point. I mean, a crime to do nothing in terms of not to complete the census questionnaire, yes, in the same way that not to fill in your tax return if you have to do one is I'm not sure if that's actually an offence, but you get fined for it, or not to have a TV licence. There's some activity expected of all.
Well, no, that's not actually true. I mean, firstly, regarding a TV licence, that's another whole discussion, actually, about the legality of it, because that's also a very interesting discussion. But regarding a TV licence, if a person chooses not to have a television, they don't have to fill in the TV licence.
Yes, but if you have a television, then
well, okay, but I'm not talking about if someone lives a very frugal life, right, and they sit and meditate all day, every day, and they don't do anything, and this is their spiritual practice.
Yes.
Then they can get a criminal record for doing nothing.
Well, they would still have to pay council tax, wouldn't they?
I don't know. Depends where they lived. If they lived in a field, they wouldn't.
Okay. But, technically then I suppose you're right, yes.
Yes. So it's now become a crime to do
absolutely nothing.
You can get a criminal record for doing absolutely nothing.
For failing to comply with legislation.
Well, you call it that. I call it doing absolutely nothing. You are admitting to me that you get a criminal record in this country for doing nothing.
In certain circumstances, yes, you could. I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Perhaps we'll talk again. It's always an absolute pleasure. You're always extremely willing to help. Thank you very much.
I'll send you these links through now.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.